Chapter 10 The Storm. One day, when it was windy and cold, Bo was allowed a rare moment on deck. She stayed in a dry corner behind a life jacket, as far away from Captain Sven as possible. She watched Billy working with the nets and wondered when he was going to give her something to eat. The fresh air always made her hungry. She could see a lot of white foam out on the lead-gray water, and the sky was dark and angry-looking. Billy called, "Bonnie, here, Bo!" and she ran to his side. He picked her up and said to the sailors, "Batten everything down good and tight, lads. Have your weather gear ready. We're going to need it. There's a storm coming. A big one, too. Force 8, I'd say." Bo had no idea what Force 8 was, but she sensed that something was about to happen. For as soon as she had eaten her meal, Billy put her on his bunk and said, "No more going topside today, Bo. Too dangerous. Be a good girl. I'll be back." He took his yellow raincoat and hat from the back of the door and got out his thick black waterproof boots. Bo knew with a sinking heart that she was going to be shut in the cabin again, and she made a dash for the companionway. Billy stuck out his foot, and she tumbled over it. He scooped her up, laughing. "You little one, this is the best place for you today. Believe me, you wouldn't want to be anywhere else." He went out and closed the door firmly behind him. Bo jumped down and sniffed at the bottom of the door, then worked her claws on the wooden floor, tearing at it in her annoyance. She got back on the bunk and looked through the porthole. It was raining, and the boat was pitching and tossing more than usual. Eventually she settled down, resignedly, and tried to sleep. Billy, meanwhile, had joined Captain Svensson on the bridge. It was hot and stuffy there, for the doors had been closed and made watertight. The window wipers were busily hissing back and forth. Red Betsy was being assaulted by heavy rain and strong winds, but she bravely tackled the enormous waves, lifting high up out of the water, then thudding down hard again, her stern occasionally clearing the sea altogether and showing the powerful whirling propellers. "Nasty bit of weather, Billy," the captain was saying. "This hit us faster than I thought, and we're in the teeth of it. I hope we don't run afoul or anything. Check the radar." Billy steadied himself and looked into the miraculous machine that traced any other ships or rocks or objects in the vicinity. It was hard to keep his balance. As well as plunging and rearing, Red Betsy was slewing from side to side, and both he and the captain had to hold on tightly to avoid being thrown about. "Lord, it's a storm to raise the shipwrecks," exclaimed the captain. "I'm going to ease the helm, otherwise we'll broach. I wish we were nearer the coast. We could have made a run for it." "This must be a Force 9, Captain," Billy said, as Red Betsy swung violently over and righted herself after what seemed like an eternity. At least, replied the captain as he spun the wheel. "We're taking on far too much water." Billy thought about Bo and hoped she was all right. Bo was far from all right. She was being thrown about the cabin, and although she dug her claws into anything she could hang on to, it didn't do much good. She went sliding this way and that, meowing in alarm as she collided with the furniture. She wondered what she could do to get out of the way of the moving objects. Red Betsy's sharp prow plunged into a towering wave. Her timbers shuddered as she strove a to heave herself out of the water and be free of its tremendous weight. For long seconds it seemed that she would continue on down into the depths, then slowly, painfully, she rose up, water streaming off her sides. There was a loud crack, and on the bridge Captain Svensson spun around. "That's the winch, Billy," he yelled. "The ringing must be broken. Quick, get a couple of lads and see what you can do. The whole aft deck could be taken out." Billy yelled for Charlie and Brian to join him and flung open the door. Immediately the screaming wind and rain tore at his clothing. "Keep one hand for yourself, lad," cried the captain, turning the wheel this way and that in order to keep the boat as steady as he could. Billy and his friends made their way carefully along the side of the boat, holding on tightly to anything they could grasp and pausing every now and then as a wave of water engulfed them. Slowly but surely they clambered to the aft deck. The winch arm had indeed broken free and was swinging wildly from side to side, pinching up and down like a horse, and the heavy chains that had held it secure were free and whipping in the gale. Charlie reached up to catch the chain that was passing close by. Red Betsy heeled over suddenly, and he fell to the deck. The next movement he was washed across the boat by the dashing sea. "Man overboard!" Uh-oh. Billy heard the desperate shout and saw his friend slipping past him, his arms outstretched in panic. Charlie's body hit the rail hard, and for 1 second the force of the water pinned him there. Billy flung himself forward and grasped Charlie's fingers just as the boat righted. He prayed silently and hung on with all his strength. As Red Betsy rolled again, he dug his heels against the bulwark and flung out his other arm, encircling Charlie's shoulders. Slowly he dragged him aboard again. The two men lay exhausted and gasping. Charlie could not speak, but gratitude showed in his eyes. Ooh, we know that word, gratitude. Then his expression turned to horror as he pinned in panic over Billy's head. Another huge wave was upon them, and the two men clung to the rigging as it smashed onto the boat, which was slewing around like a cork in an emptying bathtub. A seething, boiling mass of water raced across the decks and tore open the hatch that covered the below-deck's companionway. Gallons and gallons of water poured down the steps and pressed on towards the door of Billy's cabin. Bo heard a loud thump. The door burst open and the water crashed into the cabin and dumped itself all over her. She cried out in fright and spluttered and coughed. Then, seeing that the door was open, she wasted no time in scrambling frantically for the steps through the swirling water. Up she went and came flying out of the hatch, half crazed with fear. She was assaulted by the stinging rain, and an icy wind tore at her fur. She looked desperately for Billy and saw him just as he was getting to his feet. She also saw the loose chain and the big wooden block swinging wildly out of control and heading directly towards him. She did not see Captain Svensson, who had left the wheel in Kim's capable hands, was carefully making his way towards them. His foot came down hard on Bo's tail. She released all the pent-up emotions of the last hour in a tremendous shriek of pain. The captain yelled and fell with a thud. Billy turned and saw the swinging block only inches away from him. He ducked just in time for it to pass viciously and harmlessly over his head. Viciously, but harmlessly over his head. Captain Svensson and Bo rolled over and over as Red Betsy wallowed in the heavy seas. Water engulfed them and pulled Bo to the rail. She fought to gain a foothold as the run-off dragged at her little body. Some frantic strength helped her make headway, and she rushed straight into Billy's arms. Brian was helping the irate captain to his feet. He was bellowing orders and gesticulating wildly. "Get the hatch closed! Tie down the lines! Throw the cat overboard! Move, lads!" Billy had no choice but to act quickly. He shoved Bo down the companionway and slammed the hatch shut over her head. She rolled and tumbled down the stairs, dazed, bruised, and half filled with water. Blindly, she raced back to Billy's damp cabin, jumped onto the bunk, and retreated into the farthest corner. She gazed wide-eyed at the door, which was swinging open and shut, expecting another body of water to come hurling through at any moment. It didn't, though cups and plates and other loose items were swinging about in the wash on the floor. She was shaking violently, and her tail was aching horribly. This fish pond was not a good place to be today. She curled herself painfully into a ball and began to lick herself dry. And that is the end of chapter 10.